Hi, everybody. This is Anna Maria from Luna Voda Coaching, another episode from our series Impactful Conversations. And today I have the privilege and the joy to invite someone that I know personally, who is an exceptional coach in the area of leadership and social confidence. Not only that, he's also a self-made entrepreneur, and he has had multiple mm, accomplishments with leadership, and he's going to tell us more. And today we're meeting together because we are discussing something very important. We are discussing not only how to build confidence, how to project effortless confidence so that you can improve your communication, you can project charisma, and if you hang out with us until the end, you are also going to learn how to tap into your own confidence so that you can finally pursue those passions and hobbies you have been putting on hold. If this sounds like something you would like to experience, stay tuned. And without further ado, hi Shako, so good to have you with us.
Hey, Anna Maria, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
What would be a way for you to explain what you do to something who has never met you before?
Yep, sure. So briefly, what I do, my name is Shako Lokman, and I run a company called Mind's Eye Status, and I'm a social dynamics and communication coach, and we focus on leadership skills as well. I've been doing it for the past 4 years, working with hundreds of clients, running workshops, and helping people not only tap into that natural confidence that you described, but also learning how to be naturally charismatic and develop people skills. But those people skills come secondary to what we really do focus on, which is that inner confidence. It's the mindset work, it's the inner work, which, for example, the first module that we cover is called presence and energy, because how you're feeling internally, that's going to absolutely translate to how you're communicating with the world. In a nutshell, that's what I do. I teach people how to be better socially and to feel more naturally confident.
And I highly recommend that. So make sure to check out the description below and follow Shako because he shares so much valuable information and it is very practical, which is very important. And this is exactly why we are speaking together today, because there is a way for us to break down confidence and teach you how to become authentically confident yourself. Now, before we start, Shako mentioned something very important: the mindset work, the inner work. I myself consider myself a mindset coach primarily, even though my clients call me a confidence coach or a relationship coach or a communication coach or a leadership coach. Some clients even call me a manifestation coach. And the truth is that these are all byproducts. The essence is mindset. So whether you want to improve your communication, you want to improve your confidence, you want to improve your relationships in general, you want to find your purpose even, it all starts here. And since we're starting on the inside, let's begin with unpacking what does charisma and magnetism mean to you, Shako? And also, I'm curious myself, how do you personally differentiate between charisma and magnetism?
Oh, good question. The second question I feel is more difficult because in order to be magnetic, you need to be charismatic. So the difference, I'll answer the second question first. The difference between magnetism and charisma is magnetism is more the product of being charismatic, because the more charismatic you are, the more magnetic you'll be. What does magnetic mean? It means being attractive to people, like a magnet. And what does it take? What does it take to be magnetic and charismatic? That was the question, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What does it take? It takes confidence, first of all, which can be broken down. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But one of the biggest pillars of confidence, in my opinion, is self-acceptance. So when you meet somebody who you can see that they are comfortable in their own skin, that they love themselves, they accept themselves, and they don't expect themselves to be perfect, that is charismatic, because you can just feel it energetically. And it shows not only energetically, which is pretty much metaphysical, but also physically. It shows in their mannerisms, in their body language, in their tonality, in their ability to hold a conversation. When somebody is so self-accepting and relaxed in their own skin, they naturally become charismatic, which is why I agree, just as you said, the mindset work is the most important thing, because all those things, relationship, charisma, success, finances, they're all manifestations of that inner work, of the mindset. And also just a couple of things, charisma looks like, as I said, good body language, good tonality, and the ability to hold a conversation, the ability to engage people and hold that attention and actually command respect just from the way that you hold yourself and the way that you communicate. In turn, allowing you to connect with people and build relationships as well. If you don't have some level of charisma, it's going to be hard to proactively create new relationships.
Absolutely. And I must say that according to me, you project that ability to command respect with your presence. And if you agree with me, I would love for you to tell us in the chat or give this video a big thumbs up.
Thank you, Anna.
Absolutely, Shako. And that's another aspect of self-acceptance. The more you accept yourself, the more you accept others. And the more you accept others, the more they accept you in return. And this is why the way I teach confidence, similarly to you, confidence always. We're talking about authentic confidence because you can be arrogantly confident. Authentic confidence comes with a healthy dose of self acceptance and humility. Because when you have released the need to prove yourself or to seek validation or to demand respect, you relax. And when you relax, you're way more approachable, first of all. And second of all, you also are able to project that very membrane, metaphysically speaking, very membrane balance between boundaries and approachability. And I would like us to pause here because, Shako, this is something that I have been reflecting a lot lately. And it's a part of my leadership course that I mentioned to you before we started this podcast. I feel like this skill alone is worth millions of dollars because I find that very often people are in these two extremes. They're either way too approachable to the point of having flimsy boundaries, allowing people to walk over them, having people pleasing patterns, or they put on a facade and they become way too stoic, way too compartmentalized, way too mental. So how do you, in yourself first, as a human being, before I'm asking you as a coach, as a human being, how do you find that balance between compassion and boundaries? And also as a coach, where do you draw the line? And also how do you teach your clients to find that balance between having very clear boundaries and also having that approachability?
Oh, wow. That is such a great question. Thank you for that, Anna Maria. And I completely agree with you that there needs to be that balance because most people have two extremes. And I like the way you phrase that question. You as a human being, how do you go about it? I'll tell you how I go about it. One of my personal habits that I try to embody and practice as often as I can, pretty much every day, is self-awareness, and self-awareness specifically on my ego. What I mean by ego is my reactive self. How do I react? What emotional triggers do I have to people, right? And when I do that, it helps me see much more clearly when somebody is genuinely being disrespectful or attacking me compared to maybe somebody's just being really honest with me and they're not attacking me personally, right? Like, for example, I know this sounds like a very simple, silly example, but it's what comes to mind for me. Yesterday, I ordered some food online, but I ordered it for pickup. So I ordered it and then I went to pick it up at a drive-through. And as I went to the drive-through, at the window, the lady gave me the bag and she said, by the way, she looked really stressed, and it could have been misinterpreted as aggressive, but I was watching her face. I could see she was under a lot of pressure. She said, by the way, you're not meant to pick it up in drive-through. Like, you're meant to park your car and come inside the restaurant. And I looked at her and I said, is that right? She said, yes. And I said, no worries. Next time I order food, I'll come through the restaurant. Easy, no problem. And then I drove off. And as I drove off, you know, to the untrained eye, to the untrained ears, that story might sound really, really insignificant. But for me, as somebody that has noticed his own personal triggers with people pleasing, with feeling like people are attacking me, that is a little win, because I don't see her boundary, her assertiveness as an attack on me. I noticed it and I said, you know what? She's right. She has a point. And she's not attacking me personally. She's simply assertively telling me what the situation is. And therefore, I'm not going to take that personally. So in my day-to-day life, this is what it looks like. Even if, for example, even if my girlfriend gets really triggered or upset about a situation, and maybe I'm involved with that situation and she's expressing it really dramatically, maybe she's super upset, I need to realize that I need to put my ego aside. She's simply expressing her emotions and she needs to be heard. And this is a skill that I think especially men need to learn in relationships, that women need to express sometimes, and it's not a personal attack. For me, making that distinction, realizing, am I getting triggered because it's my ego or because I'm genuinely being attacked? Because very rarely are we genuinely being attacked. Most people that get triggered in communication, in social skills, most of the time it's their ego. They're not genuinely getting attacked or being disrespected. So that's the first part. Does that make sense before I answer your second question?
Yes, and before we continue, very quickly, I want to thank you for this practical example, because I'm sure that everyone who is watching could relate to what you're saying and apply it to their unique situation. Everyone has triggers. This is why I started by asking you as a human being.
Yeah.
It is inevitable for all of us to have these daily occurrences when we feel triggered. And before we continue, for those of you who want the actual breakdown of how to understand and translate and transcend your triggers, I have a free article on my blog. I'm going to link it down below, how to understand your triggers, and most importantly, how to overcome them. And again, before we continue with the second part of the question, how do you help your clients? Again, for those of you who are watching, and let's say you are on the other spectrum, let's say you find yourself becoming confrontational. So we heard the situation when, if you had dealt with people pleasing in the past, you may hear a slightly negative tonality as a personal attack. Now, Shako was so articulate explaining to you what is happening with your internal processor. And I would also like to add what I describe as listening with wounded ears. Wounded ears. So what does it mean? It means that you're not actually hearing neutrally what the other person is expressing. You're hearing it through your own through your own bias. And as Shako suggested, observe without judgment. In fact, from a spiritual perspective, there is a difference between judgment. We all have judgment, it's a part of our ego, and discernment. Discernment is when you are able to become neutral, practice emotional regulation, and understand that whatever is happening is not about you. Because if someone is being mean and rude and attacking you emotionally on purpose, then you set boundary. However, if someone is coming from a place of hurt, stress, or let's say you're having a conversation with your girlfriend and she's upset, expressing her feelings, right? You stay balanced and you're able to listen without adding your own bias. And this is how you can prevent so many conflicts.
Oh, so many. Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And I love that explanation of discernment. That's very, very true, because if you can observe and become aware of the situation without getting emotionally involved. I'm not saying, here's the thing, and this will go into the second part of the question because I'm going to stack onto what you just said here. We're not here to tell people, I'm sure you'd agree, that we're not here to tell people that they shouldn't feel emotions, that they should never feel triggered, that, you know, feeling angry or upset or insecure is a bad thing. I don't think so. I think those are very normal human emotions, and I know you'll agree with me on that. What I would say, though, is our reaction to those emotions is the most important thing. So even in a situation where you get triggered, let's say with your partner, for example, healthy communication, healthy emotional intelligence looks like being able to say, you know what, I do hear what you're saying, and I feel pretty triggered right now. And rather than attacking you and making the situation worse, I'd rather think about this and get back to you, baby, in maybe a couple of hours. Can you do that for me? Is that okay? You know, you're acknowledging your own triggers, but you're creating a boundary for yourself and for the container in the relationship as well. And that's just an example of intimate relationships. This applies anywhere. Now, the other side of the spectrum, like let's say you are actually being disrespected. What do I say to my clients? There's a way to assert yourself and to have put a boundary in place and stand up for yourself without breaking down the whole social interaction, without making a scene, without being dramatic. And the advice that I give to my clients about this actually is very, very simple. It's 2 steps. The first step is what I initially said, which is become aware, see if it's your own ego or if it's genuinely something that needs to be addressed. That's the first step, because usually it's your ego. Secondly, if there is a situation that you need to speak up, then do it. And here's the trick. Here's the simple method. Do it politely and respectfully. That's all you need to do. When people think of being assertive or drawing a boundary, immediately, especially if you're listening through wounded ears, as you perfectly put, people think that means aggressive, that means confrontation, that means there's going to be a fight, that means there's going to be voice raising and swearing. No. Whenever I assert myself or draw a boundary, I look as calm. I sound the same as I normally do. My tonality doesn't even change because I do it respectfully. I'll share one small example with you, and then I'd love your thoughts on this. I took my family out to dinner at a very beautiful restaurant along the river in Melbourne. And as we went into the restaurant, I noticed that it took about 10 minutes for somebody to approach us to give us a table. When we went to the table, we waited about 15 minutes and nobody even brought us menus. There were waiters and waitresses just zipping past us. And by the way, it wasn't even that busy. The restaurant wasn't that busy. After 15 minutes, I got fed up. And as a waiter walked past, I said, "Excuse me." He looked at me and I said, "I know you look pretty busy," because he was rushing around. I said, "I know you look a bit busy, but we've been waiting here for 15 minutes. So if you don't mind, could you please bring us some menus? I would really appreciate that." I said it like that, very politely. And he said, he looked a bit worried. He said, "Yeah, I'll do that." He brought the menus and I said, "By the way, since nobody came until I asked you, do you mind coming back to this table in 5 minutes?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that." That is assertive communication. That's telling them, look, we're customers. Nobody served us. What's the deal? Fix it. But the way that I did it was polite. It was empathetic. And it was in a way that can actually be received from his end without creating a scene.
Such a great example. And what I absolutely appreciate about this, again, real life example, is how you are demonstrating the energy that precedes your words. And again, this is something that we both teach our clients, the energetic container. Your energy speaks so much more than your words say.
100%.
And right, and this is why this requires congruency. Otherwise you become passive aggressive. If you
That's
try
right.
to, right?
100%. Yeah, the reason why people become passive aggressive is because they haven't sorted out their internal world first. They feel triggered and attacked. They have a certain narrative in mind. And I make this facial expression because that's how it feels. You know, that's the energy behind it. It's like, oh, you know, the service is so crappy at this restaurant. Why are they like this? Why is the world like this? Why are people so rude? Victim, victim, victim. And if that's the energy that you're coming from, if that's your identity, if that's your narrative of the world, your perspective of the world, how do you think you're going to sound when you try to draw a boundary? You're going to sound exactly passive aggressive. I completely
Yeah.
agree.
Yes, and this in itself, it's an entire conversation because there are so many nuances of how do we project our energy. And you mentioned a very important word, identity. Essentially, for example, in my type of coaching, which is based on neuro-linguistic reprogramming, which means reprogramming your mindset, for those of you who need that refresher. And ultimately, what this means is changing your self-concept, changing your self-image. So imagine that in front of you, there is a mirror, whether this is a physical mirror or a metaphysical mirror. What you see is a projection of your internal world. And most importantly, this is what other people see. And Shako, it's so funny to me, remembering in a retrospect, if you recall when we met at the mastermind where we were a part of, and I remember you made a joke around the line of me being intimidating. Which was so funny because I tend to perceive myself as having an innate warm personality. However, the reason I'm bringing this up in this podcast is because, again, exactly what Shako and hopefully I are here to display, that having that respectful energy doesn't have to come across as being rude or being, having that defense. In fact, you can be, again, very approachable, very warm, and still energetically tell others, I know my worth,
Yeah,
and if you shall not pass.
I love the Lord of the Rings reference. That's great. Yeah, you know what? You know what? I usually reserve this teaching this idea for my clients because I would say it's somewhat controversial, but you know what the heck, I'm going to share it with you here because I feel like maybe you might have some interesting thoughts on this and your listeners might appreciate this perspective as well. I believe, so I'm a deeply spiritual person. I believe we should all be connected to God, to some higher source, to yourself, to love, to become aware of your ego. Absolutely. I think we should become as present as possible, as self-accepting as possible. So this, what I'm about to say, the reason I pre-frame by saying that is because what I'm about to say might sound contradictory to what I just said if people don't understand the nuance of what I'm about to say. And that is that people should, to an extent, fear you. And I'm not saying they should fear you to the point where they're scared of you, but this is the context that I'm talking about. People should be afraid to disrespect you. That's what I mean.
Mhm.
People should be afraid to disrespect you because if they're not, then that means they don't believe that you will assert yourself. They don't believe that you have strong boundaries and that you're going to stand up for yourself. You want to be the kind of man or woman at a party, let's say at a cocktail party, where, there's gentlemen, there's lovely ladies, and you're talking, you're in a group setting. You want to be the kind of person, you want to have the type of presence and energy where somebody is not going to disrespectfully poke fun at you because they know that you're going to stand up for yourself and that it's going to embarrass them, if anything.
Mhm.
This is from the way you carry yourself, the way that you communicate, your tonality, your pausing. It manifests in all of these external things that I'm talking about, that I'm mentioning, but it starts internally.
Mhm. And thank you so much, Shako, for sharing something that you usually keep private for your students. It's very appreciated, and I know exactly what you mean, because as I'm listening to you, I remembered, and this is something that I haven't shared very often. In fact, I don't think I have shared it ever. And by the way, for those of you who are watching, this is exactly what happens when you allow yourself to be authentic. As you can feel and observe, both Shako and I are sharing things that we don't usually share. And this is the power of creating a confident and connected conversation where the other person feels invited, in fact, encouraged, and also
Yeah.
safe to share. This is very important. And speaking of what you said, having that energy of autonomy, self-respect, self-value, self-worth, and I haven't told you that either, Shako. In high school, I was bullied pretty aggressively the first year, and this was when my parents were going through a divorce, and I was going through signs of depression at the time. Even though I was 15 years old, I developed an eating disorder at the time. It was a very dark time period in my life. I even stopped doing what I adore doing. I have been a dancer my entire life, and at age 15, I even stopped dancing. I was a walking ghost, and of course, my energy was so low. That was from a spiritual perspective. I'm also deeply spiritual, and my clients are as well. I was operating from so much hurt and pain that my energy was attracting lower realms. And from a spiritual perspective, every energy has a different frequency. This is why when you operate from a place of love and joy, compassion, and serenity and equanimity with the source, of course you attract like-minded energies.
Yeah.
And the opposite is true as well. So long story short, this year was very tumultuous for me, and I was allowing people to disrespect me because I was in such a negative space of disrespecting myself. And
Mm.
again, long story short, as I went through my journey and I started rebuilding my self-concept, my identity of a confident person, and interestingly enough, as this started to happen, everyone else around me started shifting the way they perceive me. And what is so interesting, and again, the reason I'm sharing this is because I'm sure someone in the audience has experienced bullying. In fact, if you feel inspired, tell us in the chat below. And Shako, what is so interesting, again, one of those coincidences that are actually synchronicities. I have had people from this time who used to bully me. Now I don't know if they have forgotten it was me, or somehow they went through some sort of a purging and their discovery of their own identity. I don't know. The interesting thing is that some of those people became my most committed fans on social media, liking everything that I post, downloading my stuff. So it's just so interesting how suddenly I became an authority, because they may have remained where they are while I continue to evolve.
Yeah, I hear you. And thank you for sharing that with us. It's definitely relatable, and because I was bullied as well, and what you went through with all of that in your first year and with the eating disorder during the parents' divorce, that was a lot to go through, paired with the bullying. It's interesting how transformative life can be. And I just want to acknowledge that. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And that shift of people going from bullies to fans, isn't that interesting? Because isn't that a testament to how your reality literally changes? Speaking about spirituality, let's dabble in that for a second. The moment you start making these internal shifts, as we try to proactively do as much as possible, I know you do, and it's obvious, what you will notice, this is for anybody, even anybody listening, if you meditate or if you are thinking about meditating, I would encourage you to experiment with it. Go deeper. Go as deep as you can, okay? Just for 2 months. for 1 month, go as deep as you can, just experiment and see what happens to your reality. You will notice things change. You will literally feel like you're living in a different world. Your reality will be completely different. Who was once an enemy will become a fan. Who was once an enemy, you will look at them and you will understand them. You might even pity them. Maybe not pity, but you'll understand them at least. You'll have empathy. You'll come from a place of neutrality. It's the most important thing. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
I pause for a moment because I find that silence could be very meaningful. And that word neutrality you used again from a spiritual perspective, and I really enjoy how this conversation started spiraling upward. From a spiritual perspective, neutrality is your portal to transcendence. And this is a very practical suggestion. I use it with my clients. Let's say you are in a very negative space. Most of your days you experience self-criticism, self-doubt, envy, anger, frustration, whatever it is. And if we are to tell you that you can live in the state of bliss and love and joy every single day, it might seem unattainable yet. So what you can do is to strive towards neutrality. Remember the story Shako shared with us earlier? Start to observe. Start to observe your reaction. Start to observe how do you respond to others. Start to observe how other people respond to you. And start there. And Shako said, meditate for at least 2 months. Imagine what happens when this becomes a part of your lifestyle. Shako and I are both spiritually involved people, to put it this way, and I've been in the spiritual world, so to say, for more than a decade, and I contribute my success to my spiritual practice more than anything, to be quite honest with you. And before we continue, again, speaking of neutrality, this was the threshold. This was the hero's journey. This is when I was able to enter the cave. I'm referring to Joseph Campbell, to enter the cave that contains my shadow self and befriend her and understand her, have compassion. And again, before we go too deep into the spiritual realm, again, from this is also based on psychology. Your shadow self contains all the darkness. This is the dark night of your soul. This is all of the traumatic experiences you have ever had. Imagine when you show up every day and you are projecting your shadow. Of course, you're going to attract more circumstances that trigger your shadow, and vice versa. When you operate from a place of light, from a place of acceptance. If you remember, this is exactly how we started this conversation. Shako talked about acceptance as the portal of your confidence, as that vessel that contains your magnetism and your aura. Again, your aura becomes golden. This is why some people are so attractive to others. And again, before we continue, I want to sum up what we discussed so far with a few action steps. Ultimately, this is also something that I teach my clients. The only caveat to be mindful of is that the more you shine, the more you upset people who are in the shadow self. This is why it's so imperative to have boundaries, not just verbal boundaries, energetic boundaries. You have to surround yourself with a golden bubble of light and protect yourself from invaders. This is why I made the joke earlier, you shall not pass, because it's a very easy way to remember that, to protect your energy field. And then the second action step I recommend, this is, I'm drawing from what Shako suggested earlier, monitoring your reaction and using kindness. Say what you want to say and be empathetic. Remember that the other person is a human being after all. And then finally, and I love this advice, I'm going to coach you on that. It's such a great one. Be okay with people fearing you. And as Shako said, not because they're scared of you, but because they know that they can no longer confront you because you have become an energetic authority. So these are the action steps for now. Let us know in the chat what is landing for you. I know this is a lot of practical insight and also philosophical insight. So before we continue, Shako, I always like to ask this question, all of my correspondents. Is there anything specifically that stood out for you so far that you're taking from this conversation as a human being and also as a coach?
Yeah, let me tell you something. So what you said about as you level up and as you know, just to use simple language, which I'm sure your listeners and your audience will understand, when you start tapping into more high vibration thinking and living, anything that is very low vibration, anything that is stemming from a lot of ego, it doesn't resonate with you anymore. And what's interesting is, especially in the past week, I've been increasingly aware of my own narratives personally, my own influences, what I allow into my life, what I consume on social media, in terms of, is this a positive narrative or is it a low vibration, victimized, traumatic narrative? And now we're having this conversation, which is a very real result of both your world and my world being attracted to one another, right? And that point that you made about people not resonating with it and people almost feeling threatened by your aura as you level up. Look, guys, of course, I'm sure that if you haven't experienced this, it might sound almost egotistical. It's like, hey guys, I'm leveling up. I've been meditating and now, people don't even get it. They don't even understand how to get to my level. They can't even comprehend where I'm at. It's not that. It's literally not that. It's simply just becoming more aware of your humanity, more aware of ego. And so things don't go under the radar. Things that people do, it's simply a reflection of yourself. The reason why we can look at somebody and not be triggered anymore by them, or they won't resonate with us, is because we see through the BS. We can see as a mirror what we can only recognize, what we can experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if I see somebody and for example, I've had this experience before. I talk about money with some of my friends and I talk about big goals, like big goals that the average person will probably think is out of their realm of possibility. And then I see a friend of mine, maybe a childhood friend, kind of make a face, not understand, not even comprehend why we're talking about this amount of money. Now, energetically, my energetic boundary, the golden bubble, as you put it, is to not let that affect my narrative at all. But I also understand that they can't comprehend it because I couldn't comprehend it at one point, and that's fine. The boundary I'm going to put in place for myself is I'm not going to spend as much time with this person. I'm not going to share as many ideas with this person anymore. And that means these people are slowly getting filtered out of your life. And the people that you do attract, whether it's a partner or friends or business partners, they're the ones that resonate at the same vibration as that narrative that you do have.
Yes, and I am nodding so much because I can totally resonate to what you're saying, Shako. And speaking of the concept of money, what helped me so much to reframe my relationship with money, and again, the common theme of today's conversation is not just about confidence, it's about setting boundaries. And this also, it's also tied to your compensation. This is why confident people, authentically confident people, tend to make more money. It is not a coincidence at all. It's another confirmation of your self-value. What I tell my clients, that for them is a big insight: the higher your self-worth, the higher your net worth. However, your net worth does not innately change your self-worth. This is why we see many people with a lot of money who are struggling in silence. And again, before we continue, this is another reason why coaches and entrepreneurs who are doing really well have a different type of clientele. It's not because of any sort of elitism. And again, it took me a lot of time to reframe it in my own mind because I love giving, as Shako can tell you. And what hit me is that when you are trying to help people who are still haven't even reached neutrality, they're not able to receive what you're giving them. And everything is energy, including money. So this is why the exchange at a higher frequency is actually more impactful. And to sum up with a more practical example, one of the reasons Shako and I are speaking from this very honest place is not just because we know each other, which of course helps. It is because we are tapped into this bubble of aligned energy. And as he said, when two energies are attracted to each other, doesn't have to be romantically by any means. Everybody's attracted to somebody. This is pure energy. It is magnetism. Again, it is magnetism. And ultimately, this applies to the people who are listening or watching to this podcast. This is why I am very comfortable talking about more metaphysical concepts, because I know that the people I attract in my audience are spiritual people. Otherwise, they wouldn't even tune in and listen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I want to add something to what you just said. To anybody listening who isn't actually stepping out of their comfort zone to tap into this high frequency more proactively, what are you waiting for? Honestly, what are you waiting for? The way that Anna Maria and I met was in a high level, very high ticket mastermind where it was, God, I think the program costs around $30,000 or something. Like, I'll say that openly, and you can cut that out if you don't want your listeners to hear. But it was an expensive, it was a very, very expensive program. And we both decided, we stepped out of our comfort zone to join independently. We didn't even know each other at that point. And what happened? We attracted a network, a friendship with different people, not just us, even other people that we met in the mastermind at that higher level. So you think it was comfortable to drop $2,000 every month on a program? No, it's not. It's not comfortable for anybody, unless you're making a very, very high income. Then that's relative as well. But at that point, for me, it wasn't comfortable in the beginning anyway. But it started to become very comfortable because I started surrounding myself with people that normalized high level living and thinking. So if you're listening to this and you're sitting on the couch eating a bag of Doritos or Cheetos, do something. Don't just listen to these podcasts. I'm really grateful that you're listening to us, that you're here, that you're tuning into Anna Maria's amazing podcast. But make sure that you actually action the steps that she gives you. Without that, nothing's going to happen for you. So that's my last bit of motivation.
Oh, I love that. And let me, in full transparency, because I joined this mastermind from America, my entry point was even higher. And even though I had already accustomed to invest in myself at a higher price point, it definitely requires a lot of self-confidence. This is something that not many people understand. When you invest in yourself, this is 95% of your results from coaching, that belief that you're worthy, of putting so much investment into yourself and your well-being. Not to mention, again, the network. Shako and I were talking before we started. Your network is invaluable. It is invaluable. And this is why confidence helps you to open these doors and make unforgettable first impressions. Because again, it's not just about going to networking events. It's how do you make people remember you? And because we're almost at the end of this podcast, although I wish we had one more hour or a few more hours. Maybe Shako should come again, tell us in the chat. And I'm looking for a reason to have you back.
I'd
And
love
as
to.
we yes, and as we are finishing with a few more insights, Shako, how does someone make an unforgettable first impression? Now we're back to practicality after we discussed spirituality, and imagine that you have a client who tells you, Shako, I'm freaking out. I'm going to this event and I need to make an unforgettable first impression. What do you tell them to do?
Yeah, fun question. Great. Okay, so your first impressions are very important. Okay, they're very important. We can't deny that when people look at you. Before I get into the actual interaction side of things, the first thing I want to say is make sure you dress well. Make sure you dress well. Clothes that fit, clothes that match. The colors are nice. It's not too crazy. Take inspiration from Pinterest, by the way. Go onto Pinterest and type men's fashion or women's fashion, summer, winter, autumn, whatever, European. That'll give you some good inspiration. Do that. That's a practical tip. And also make sure your clothes fit. Make sure they're not overly baggy unless that's the look that you're going for. Be very conscious of that. So dress well, be well groomed, smell good. That introduces you before you open your mouth. Have good style, have a good sense of fashion. Now, when you do approach people, when you do open your mouth, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. The best way to approach somebody is simply to open your mouth and say, hello, hi, I'm Shako. Especially if it's a networking event or a place where people know each other. You can say, how do you know the host? And of course, you want to have a big smile on your face, but one subtle tip and nuance that I share with my clients is the smile should naturally open on your face because that's more natural. People will get the impression that they made you smile when you slowly open a smile as you make eye contact with them. Make eye contact, and when you shake their hand, shake. This is very simple advice, but it may surprise you how many people don't actually follow through with this. Firm handshake. The amount of men that I see who, when somebody enters the room or a dinner party, for example, and they shake their hand, the men don't stand up to shake the other man's hand. That blows me away. Every time you shake somebody's hand, you want to stand up and shake their hand. Same thing for women as well. So having that element of respectful, charming charisma and communication, especially when you're first meeting people, is essential. I like looking at people a little bit longer than normal when I first meet them and noticing their eyes, noticing their face, because you can tell a lot about somebody from the way that their eyes move around. For example, if you notice that they break eye contact immediately and they're kind of darting around and they look back at you quickly, that means they're a bit introverted, they're a bit nervous. In that case, that's information for you to, back off a little bit, slow down your pace when you communicate with them. When you can match somebody's energy in your first impression, that will make you extremely likable. But if they look back at you and you can see they're looking into your soul as well, that means they're a bit more extroverted, maybe a bit more confident, and you can have a bit more fun with them. You can be a bit more extroverted and playful with them. So matching somebody's energy in that first impression is super important. And the last tip I'll give you is if you struggle with eye contact, try to notice the color of every person's eye who you're talking to in your meeting. This will train you to have good eye contact.
Amazing tips. And I would love for you to tell us in the chat which tip resonates with you the most, from dressing for success, as we call it, to remembering people's eyes in order to maintain confident eye gaze. And confident eye gaze is usually 7 to 10 seconds. And when you are able to maintain confident gaze, you project not only confidence, you project the sense of I'm very comfortable with myself. And because of our mirroring neurons, as Shako explained, we match each other, right? And something that I like to do is I meet the person where they are at first, and then I gradually build and build and build and build. And by the end of our conversation, the person is visibly more relaxed and confident and energetic, which also always helps, because when you, this is so important, when you help people feel good in your presence, of course they're going to remember you. And this is truly the hack. So instead of thinking, oh, let me look extremely glamorous, or let me walk as I owe the place, yes, this helps. You can definitely learn how to enter a room and make sure that everybody's looking at you if you want to. However, that's not the point. The point is not for people to remember how you look. This is superficial. It's for people, and I'm paraphrasing Maya Angelou, who said, people are going to forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel.
Yep.
And that's truly how you make an unforgettable first impression. Make sure that people feel good in your presence, and they're going to remember you forever.
100%. Yeah,
Fantastic.
that's a huge takeaway, and that's what I say as well. People don't always remember what you say, but they will always remember how you made them feel.
And I hope you feel really good. I feel really good.
Absolutely. It's always so pleasant talking to you, Andrew.
Oh, absolutely, likewise. And again, this if there is something that inspires you to go out in the world and build this unshakable confidence that opens all doors for you, let it be the power of creating lasting relationships. Both Shako and I, we share this value in common. Life is about relationships, after all.
100%.
And as Steve Jobs said, I don't want to be the wealthiest billionaire in the graveyard.
That's right.
You want to finish your lifetime with that feeling of, I live to the fullest, and confidence helps you that. And the final question is, Shako, what is something that you are now able to do that you couldn't do before you built unshakable confidence?
Sit in so much comfort without needing approval in any environment.
I am absolutely sure that this is landing with many people. And for me, what is confidence helping me to do that I couldn't do before is truly going after my passions, and believing in myself, and trying and going through setbacks and getting stronger, more resilient, and I just keep going.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would agree with that. That's definitely another outcome. But for me personally, because of the way that I grew up with the social anxiety that I had, the overthinking that I had, I gotta say it's my favorite thing to be able to sit in any environment, not need anything, and just be totally relaxed in my body. That's my favorite thing personally. But you're right, as your confidence goes up, your confidence, oh, we can talk about this forever, but I agree, because as your confidence goes up, you get the confidence to go after your goals. It's true.
Yes. So great. I can't wait to have you again, because we can talk about this for so long. And in fact, I'm already coming up with an idea for us to teach an event together. If you would like Shako and I to coach you in a private event, let us know in the chat, because remember, information comes and goes. However, it is the implementation of this information that creates lasting transformation. And imagine what is possible for you when you truly believe in yourself, when you feel very comfortable in your skin without needing anyone's approval or external validation, and you're just so comfortable. And most importantly, regardless of your personality type, conversations start to help you to feel really good about yourself and the world we live in. And I believe that's so important, to have hope and enthusiasm and to wake up with passion. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching or listening to this podcast in full. We would love to hear from you in the comments. Remember to check out Shako's information down below and be the change you want to see in the world. Until next time, This is Anna Maria from Lunavore Coaching. Remember, you are legendary. You belong to the top, and I can't wait to see you there. Bye.